Sit Room executives. Welcome back to another episode. If this is your first time tuning in, make sure you head over to iTunes, search Multifamily Investor Situation Room, and subscribe. You should also subscribe to our YouTube channel for the video version and other great content. Remember to check out our Facebook deal group as well, because there is where we share many ideas as well as real estate investment strategies and find people to partner up with on deals. Last, search us out at multifamilyinvestorsituationroom.com. Now, let's get into it. Our guest today has an interesting story in that not only are all of their holdings owned by their family, but they are more aggressive in taking down heavy lift value-add communities. Pankaj Sharma is second-generation multifamily owner-operator with over 20 years' experience in the field. His current personal portfolio consists of 2,000 units in 5 major cities in eastern Pennsylvania. His latest deal closed in July of 2019 when his company purchased a $50 million fixer-upper in Harrisburg. He started Sharma's Karma, a YouTube channel, as a way to document his journey and give back. KarmaCast interviews can also be found on various platforms like iTunes and Spotify. Today we have Pankaj Sharma on the show. Welcome, sir. How are you today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. I really appreciate you taking time to join us today. So why don't you go ahead and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started in real estate?
Well, when I was 10 years old, my father purchased his first multifamily unit. It was a 52 unit property that he bought, and he bought it owner financing. So he borrowed like $90,000 down on the property, and owner assumed there was an assumable loan, and then he would pay the owner, and the owner would pay the assumable loan as well. And the owner provided some owner financing. So that's when he got into the property. So from a very young age, I was always seeing the whole aspect of property management, dealing with tenants. I was painting apartments when I was 12 years old, cutting the grass for the property. And he eventually grew from one property to another property to another property. And so as I got older, it wasn't something I thought I would be doing myself personally. I thought something, I wanted to get as far away as I could from it. Simply because I only saw it from one perspective. I saw it from the perspective of dealing with the headaches, dealing with, the day-to-day. And as I got older, I was a property manager myself, and I managed a couple of our properties, and then I moved to California. And when I came back from California and I got married, I just acquired a new property that was a foreclosed property. It was a 96 unit property in 2000, right around 2000. And the 96 unit was, out of the 96 units, only 20 units were occupied. It was a foreclosed property, so there was no bank financing. We had to buy it cash. We bought it cash for $2 million. Today, 20 years later, that property is worth over 10 million, just in valuation. We added 60 units to that property that we built. There's 2 floors that were vacant on this high rise, and it was really, bad shape. And so went through a lot of heartache and things, because it's a high rise building. There was a shooting in the building a month before we acquired the property. So not all our properties are like that, but that property was like the hardest, most difficult property. And after running that property for 20 years, I did take a break for a few years in between. I got burned out on it and came back to it. And now it's, doing quite well, actually. And after that experience, that's not the only property I had. But after that main experience with that property, I just feel like, we can go anywhere, do anything. And we don't want to go in super, super bad areas like, D-class, but we've got a record of being able to just turn around, almost like hopeless properties or properties that have been really distressed. But it's not something I want to continue. But it just keeps happening for me. It's happened so long. That's just one example, but it just continues to happen. And then just recently in July, we bought an 828 units in Harrisburg, one deal, major distress properties. Previous owner just did not put money back in, did not pay bills, did not do a lot of things that, is necessary to do to continue to work. And he was also, I believe he's a second generation. He got the properties really cheap. He was running them, refinancing them, over leveraging them. And just when you think you've seen it all, you haven't seen it all. There's always something else to see. And so that's kind of a little bit of my dig of how I got into to doing what I'm doing today.
So I've got a couple of follow-up questions actually.
Sure.
One thing that you mentioned with your first deal, I mean, you went into, this was, you said in 2000, right? And you bought it was 96 unit. Basically, it was an opportunistic deal because it was distressed, right? I mean, so, and then you eventually added 60 units. You said that you had reached a burnout, right? Tell us about that. Like, where did this come about? This burnout from that particular
I
experience.
was the property manager. I was
Okay.
So from that side of things of dealing with, trying to fill a building and at the same time deal with all the headaches that were going on in the building. I could tell a lot of stories, but I'm not going to tell too many. But, after a while, I just felt like maybe I'm not, I wanted to pursue other things too. So I wasn't fully like all in on the apartment thing at the time too, because I really wanted to explore other things. And I don't want my whole life to be like a workaholic and just, just it's the same kind of roller coaster. And so I brought in a property management. I'd read Kiyosaki's books at the time too. And I was like, wow, that kind of got me more to shift and thinking of like as myself as an investor and business person, as opposed to a worker and a property manager, somebody who's working full-time in the business. So from that shift, also, I started listening to Ken McElroy's property management course. And so I thought maybe somebody else knows how to do this better than me. And I got in a property management company to come in. We took it back after 6 months, and I learned a lesson then that, we've always, as a family, we've been in the business 40 years. We've always managed our own properties. And I just feel that it's important for us to continue to stay into that phase for now. Maybe at some point, if I invest or, purchase something outside of my area, outside of my neighborhood, or outside of Pennsylvania, I would get a company to manage an investment for me. But at this point, we're like owners and operators. So we do both sides of the coin. We're property management, which is we've gotten better at, I think, over the years, but I feel like that's the area that I still need to grow in. I still need to improve my operations. And there's always unlimited potential to improve things, in that field for me. And yeah, I don't even know what the question was, but
So yeah, just along the lines of the burnout. So that came about because you were actively involved. I mean, you were the property manager, and you said you took a break. Now you just got into an 828 unit deal. You said in Harrisburg, and I'm assuming that you guys, your family, your company, you're going to manage that yourself. So, is there anything that you can tell us about that deal? How did that come about? And, what's the play on it, so far, and what are your plans to manage that going forward based off of your past experiences, with these other properties?
our play over the years has always been pretty much the same. We buy a distressed property, a value add property, a property that we get at a very reasonable price, and we slowly and steadily pay the bills on it. We pay the mortgage on it, and we fix it up slowly and steadily. But we buy it for the long haul. So it's not like we're not gonna do like an interest only loan, or we're not gonna flip it in 3 to 5 years. We're not looking for the valuation on the property. We're looking for the cash flow. We're looking for the operations, and we're looking for long-term hold, so that we can pass it down to the next generation. Sometimes we'll sell a property and then parlay that money into a larger property. Like for example, at one point we sold our second property that was about 60, 70 units, and we bought 400 units. But we rarely sell. we're buy and hold. And so we just steadily, we just do what's practical. What we fix up the property, what needs to be done. And then you can't attack the whole thing at once because it's been distressed for so many years. So you got to pick your battles, and try to do the outsides, fix up, and you're slowly but steadily changing your reputation. And it takes a couple of years for that, because it's been took 20, 30 years to build up a reputation of being like this, really messed up place. And then overnight, you're not going to just change that demographic. Overnight, you're not going to just change that reputation. It's a slow build. So it's a slow, patient process. And we just been putting out a lot of fires, because there's just a lot of fires to put out all the time. You just never know in this business, and just continue to just roll forward, move forward. And as we, like just within this year, in July, it will be a year of having that property, right? Which is just, it comes fast.
Mm-hmm.
We'll already pay another $2 million down on the equity on that property because of the way we structured our financing.
Wow. So could we drill down a little bit and just talk about the process, like where you're talking about you have to, in essence, we're repositioning the property, because a lot of investors that I've invited on the show so far typically just kind of, light value add. When they're going in, I mean, it's already, like 90%, 92% occupied, nothing distressed. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this has got to be pretty new for a lot of people still. What is this whole transition process like for the property? I mean, how do you go about, changing or repackaging this whole community to make it more attractive to people?
Yeah. It's a very good question. And there's so many things to do. And like I said, you have to pick your battles, and see where the money can go first. Each property has its own unique set of circumstances. So we personally, I don't have like a cookie cutter. Like a lot of people get into a system where they got to streamline and they just do this, and that. I don't have that. I'm very fluid, and I'm very like spontaneous, and I'm very in the day to day. So whatever I see in my business, a lot of times things just come up and I just deal with life as it occurs. Maybe I'm responsive, maybe I'm reactive, but we take care of the basic needs first. So the first thing obviously is very important, is to get rid of all the deadbeat tenants. There was a lot of tenants in these properties that were not even capable of affording renting a property, and they were just kind of filling up the place. So there was a lot of that, and a lot of that had to be cleaned out. The other thing is just you have to look at the outside of the building, and like they had these ugly green shutters that were all different colors. They were faded from the sun. They were never painted correctly. So I had to invest the money to paint all the shutters on this one property. And that was quite a bit of time work and getting the right vendor to do that. Another sidewalk, the whole block of the sidewalk was like up like this. So it's a huge trip hazard. So $50,000 just to redo the whole sidewalk. But in doing these type of major improvements, right, we started building a reputation with the city. The mayor wanted to meet us from the city. And this is the state capital of Pennsylvania, Harrisburg. So he hasn't met us yet, but we were on their watch list, or we're on their, mind or radar. We're on their radar all of a sudden, because as an investor, we're not just looking at the ROI, we're looking at we're investing in the community. We're changing a culture. And so it has to start first also with our own people, our own management team, and the people that work for us. So now I'm not a day-to-day manager, but I manage the managers and I manage the overall operations of the whole thing. And so it's getting the right people in place, and now I'm focused on training the people, training them in sales and training. And I've never done that before. I've always kind of trained them here and there, and they learn from me, and they mentor me, but to really focus on getting a training system in place, and to train them on how to deal with tenants and give them that tenant experience that every tenant is looking for. But we deal with the basics, making sure that the rents are paid, make sure we can get good bodies in these apartments. And we've done very well for some reason. I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with just a sense of no matter what happens, you'll be okay. You feel able to face whatever happens. And there's just a lot of things were happening because I was never in a situation before where I was getting calls that they shut off the gas at this building, or they're going to shut off the electric, or getting these shut off notices, or the phone lines were shut off at the high rise building, which is very dangerous because the phone lines operate the fire system, everything, fire alarms, all that kind of stuff. So these are actual things that we did to deal with just in the first few weeks of taking over these properties, because I've never taken over a property where there's just so much, not just distress, but so much like people were just not paid, and even water bills, right? Like water is a title issue, that all the water, trash, those type of things, the city holds the trash in that area. So they were all paid at the closing, but then we were going through this one bill was reversed, $25,000 water bill was reversed on a credit card. And we're going back and forth with that for a whole while. So you just can't make this stuff up. You can't plan this stuff out. You just got to be able to just kind of, my philosophy is to just go with the flow, do what's most practical. And as long as you're above your break-even point, knowing what your break-even point is, knowing you're above that, you're able to pay your bills. From that, everything is glory, because as long as you continue to put one foot in front of the other and continue to do what you need to do, continue to do what's necessary, everything will improve and get better.
So, so on a property of this size, I mean, this is a pretty big property. How long typically, or right now, are you finding from the acquisition until you reach, your turnaround point where you consider, okay, now we're seeing the right demographic. Now things are really looking, what's that timeline look like?
The timeline in the past used to take 3 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I speculate that we're doing it more so in a year, we're almost there.
That's fast.
Within this 1 year, we're almost there. We're doing pretty good. A lot of our properties are above 93% collections. So there's just 2 properties that we're working on now. And I think it's great for coming and just cleaning house and getting rid of a lot of people. And then and the people that are gold tenants that have been there for a while, like the best advertisement is with the tenants. And when they see the changes you're making positive changes, and they appreciate that, we give them the referrals, give them $100 if they refer somebody to come in. Let them be your advertisers, and let them, let them create some talking points. You got to create talking points amongst your clientele in whatever business you're in. I got this idea of talking points. Somebody wrote a book, I think it's Jay something, but there's a book called Talking Points, and I didn't read the book, but I saw his presentation, and it just gave me some great ideas to create talking points. And we just we give, for the people that are paying online, they're paying through their phones, we give them a t-shirt, and it'll just say our logo on the front, which they don't know what that means, but then on the back it'll say our motto, strong, steady, stable. So they're walking around, people are asking, what's that mean? Mm-hmm. And then they get to actually start talking about us. Get them to talk, get your clientele to talk about you, create some talking points, advertise, build up with what you have first, but now I just want to clarify, these 800 units is just not one property. There are 5 properties collective, 5 properties. They're all in the same city. 3 are kind of next to each other, and then 2 are very relatively close to each other, and they're about 15 minutes apart in Harrisburg. And pretty famous properties too in Harrisburg, but they're just famous for being neglected.
Oh. Oh man. So so I take it this was part of a package deal then, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, it seems as though you have a bit of a knack for finding, for finding good deals like this. I mean, how do you come across these types of distressed deals?
It's broker relationships. Developing that relationship with the brokers, because they're the ones who know their owners. They're the ones who get the listings. They're the ones who know the buyers, and they know which buyers are appropriate for which type of listings. And so they know that that's what our thing is. We're the ones that were able to. There was one other person I think that was looking at this deal, and it was an off-market deal. It wasn't advertised on, through a big mail out or anything. So it wasn't officially listed even. It was kind of 2 different brokers were even kind of fishing for a buyer on this deal. And the one broker that we have a very good long-term relationship with he's the one who got us looking at the deal. I honestly wasn't too interested from the beginning, but then I was like, what the heck, you know? And at one point, the year before Thanksgiving, I was away and we were supposed to sign the deal. Everything was supposedly finalized, and I just had this really bad gut feeling and I didn't sign it. And I just felt like a weight that was lifted off of me. And I'm like, I'm glad I avoided that deal. A few months later, the deal came back and I'm like, oh God. But something happened. I think the whole energy around the deal shifted. The owner was really pushing to get it closed very fast, and he really wasn't giving us time to do a proper due diligence. And I'd already seen the leases, and I already seen the tenant base. Once you go through the leases and you see the paperwork and you see what's going on with the property, and you start doing that due diligence, we had done some of it, and I just wasn't feeling right. But when he came back to us in a whole different place. He didn't have anybody else that could do it. He had one other person. They were interested in 4 of the properties, but that 5th property was the high-rise building called Bellevue Towers. Nobody wanted that. And so because we were the ones that we said, okay, we're going to have to just buy the whole deal. And we were the only ones that were willing to buy the whole deal and be confident that we'll be okay. And we were able to luckily refinance. Now this property, right? Like when you have a property that's not running very well, you're not going to get, all of a sudden the bank's not going to say, come on, we can give you financing on it either. So getting the financing for these type of deals where the property is not already established, if they're doing 90% and above occupancy and they're getting those collections and they're doing relatively well, they're demonstrating that kind of cash flow, and it's easy getting financing. But if that's not the case, then financing is challenged. So luckily we were able to refinance a property that was paid off. A property that we had bought for less than $5 million, which is now worth about maybe over $20 million in 25 years period of holding that property. So we were able to refinance $15 million from that property, put in $5 million of our own. It was a $50 million deal. So the other $30 million was the mortgage on the property itself. Mm-hmm. So 60% of 50% is, so we did a 60% loan financing, which is the 30 million on the property itself, the 5 properties. And then we had to put in 20 million down, and 20 out of the 20 million, only 5 million is cash. Mm-hmm. And then you got closing costs for another $1.5 million probably. So what industry, my father says, and I say, what industry can you control a $50 million asset that's going to generate income, but only put down 6 to 7 million of your own cash?
Yeah. So basically you're going into these deals, just yourselves. You're not actually syndicating these, right?
No.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Got it. Nice. So what would you say has been like the single biggest challenge, if you were to say just one, major challenge that you think you've been faced with over the years in your business? What do you think has been the single biggest challenge?
The single, there's continuous, it's a very challenging business, and there's always challenges, and we get paid to meet challenges. And on a regular challenge is dealing with people. The better off you are in managing yourself and being with like a self-awareness and with dealing with your own internal stuff, I think the better off you are with dealing with other people. You're more skilled in that area. So people skills, dealing with people, managing people is very important, because these people, they're the ones who are going to build your business. And without the right people, your business, they can make or break your business. The property management makes or break any investment in multifamily. And so we've made a business of buying properties that were mismanaged, not managed properly. Because if they were managed properly, why would they sell them at that? Why would they get to that level? And why would they need to sell them? So we've been able to find those properties. That's kind of been our niche, to find the properties that have been mismanaged. And then we bring our love and our attention and manage these properties with some care and some patience, and slowly and steadily build them up over time.
So if you were talking to someone that was looking at getting into the business, what would be a key piece of advice you'd have for them?
Key advice would be to find people that are doing the business, you know, really start meeting and networking with people that are in the business and seeing if you can shadow them, talk to them, maybe even work for them, to learn from the inside. And then on the side, start, getting the gears spinning. But if you just want to you're already ready to do the business, you just talk, communicate, learn as much as you can,
Mhm. So is there any reading material you'd recommend people, they take a look at to either learn more about real estate or maybe even work on their mindset or anything?
So I'm not a big reader. My father's never really been a big reader, especially when it comes to real estate. There was times where I've had libraries of books and I've read a lot of them, but none of them dealt with real estate. I mean, years ago when I was younger, I would read like the No Money Down from Rob Allen. I don't know if you're
Hmm.
familiar with that. A long time ago, he was the classic. And I would do all these courses with like Carlton Sheets and Ron LeGrand, and I'd
Yeah.
listen to all the tapes and stuff like that. I took zero action off of that, and I found them very useless, to be honest. In hindsight, I'm 30 years later looking at this stuff. I found it at that time useless. Other people might find it as gold. I don't know. Kiyosaki, I only read 2 books, and they pretty much, I think there's other books that said the same thing, but they just got me to think in a different aspect. But I don't go back and reread those books. Recently, I found a book that Grant Cardone put out on real estate, and I just looked at it, and I was like, when I first came across Grant Cardone years ago, I thought like, wow, he's talking about multifamily. I'm in multifamily. He's inspirational. And he was at, I think, $350 million worth of real estate at the time. And I thought he was an interesting character. So I would listen to him off and on just for like, inspiration. And then I just couldn't take it no more because it was just so much salesy kind of stuff. But I wondered, I was like, does this guy have any real estate stuff out there? He had nothing at the time. And then years later, I came across him again. He had this real estate book he was giving away, just pay for the shipping. So I bought it. I got the book, but I never read it. And then recently I looked at it. But at this time, I became more familiar with Cardone. So I said, this book, I just looked at the book and I'm like, this book is it really a book on real estate, or is it a book on investing in Cardone Capital? And then I said, let me read the book. And I made a video like critiquing like half of the book, and I didn't even go back and do a part 2 to finish it up, because it was just like, if a new investor would have read that book, they would be so confused. Because it's just like almost talking you out of doing it. And, just give me the money, I'll do it for you, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you got to be very careful. I only say that you got to say that there's a lot of books. I just picked up the multi-million book by Lindell, multifamily millions or something like that.
Multifamily millions. Yeah.
I started reading that, and then the beginning of that book, something that he says is like apartments are not competitive or whatever. So that book is already predated. Like the information is incorrect. Like it's very competitive now. What are you saying? So it's a niche that you can make all this money and it's not competitive. He's saying right there in the first chapter. So it's not true. So books, they can be helpful. But they can also be damaging at the same point. And I don't think anybody puts that out there. Books can be very damaging, especially as a new investor sometimes, because you're reading it, this is one person's perspective. And that perspective is going to change. That if they wrote that book 10 years ago, whoever they are today, they're not saying the same thing. They're not thinking the same thing. They're not the same person even. So I think the podcasts are even more helpful, because the podcast, you're getting real information from a person. It's in present day time almost. And then you can reach out to some of these people through the podcast and connect with them. I've had people like now, they're talking to me, they're reaching out to me. I'm not like a big guy that can help somebody that's brand new. I can help somebody more so who's already in the business maybe, and share ideas and concepts. There's other people that are out there, they can help people. They want to do mentorships and stuff. There's a whole bunch of things that for the last 3 months since I've come onto the online world of multifamily, I've discovered a whole lot of stuff going on out there. Prior to that, I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't into any of it. And I know I gave you a very long answer about the book thing, but I just want to be upfront.
No, I appreciate it.
Crushing it multifamily has been pretty good so far.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of that one. That's a good one. Yeah. So how could our listeners get in touch with you if they wanted to reach out to you?
Instagram, SNS, S as in Sam, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, SNS Properties Investment is our Instagram thing. And then on YouTube, we have a channel called Sharma's Karma, which we're doing a lot of multifamily stuff on as well. We have our episodes, and we meet with, showing different aspects of multifamily, as well as our Karma Cast podcast. I got a lot of great people coming up that are like, this is a podcast that we do not through the computer, that we do right here in our studio. We sit down and we talk, and I'm talking to people I got a guy coming in, he's got over 7,000 units. So if you think I'm doing well with 2,000, there's much bigger fish, and I got a guy I've seen him over the 10 years. He started his own, he's a real estate broker. They do nothing but multifamily. And I saw this kid when he was young. He was with CBRE, which is a really growing company. They broke off and started their own company. And they've done some amazing things. He's coming Friday on our thing. We're going to record it Friday, at least. I don't know when we're going to release it, but just meeting with a lot of local people. I started doing that local thing of building like local networking and meeting and connecting with people that I've known through the industry, but I've never had the time to sit down and really talk with them and pick their brain and share those nuggets with other people. So that's what I'm starting to do now.
Nice.
Really, nice. Is on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all those platforms.